Jarvis, drop my needle.
Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and if you are interested in listening to idiots, you came to the right place. Have a nice day.
Woo! That's an attention getter.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot. What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
Oh my God, he's an idiot.
You know, of course, that you're out of your jurisdiction.
Personally, I think you're an idiot.
But that's the evidence in the car.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Always like to keep my audience riveted.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fiends, and welcome to Free Range Idiocy, the podcast about everything, but mostly just the stuff we like. Previously on Free Range Idiocy, the Cylons were created by man. They rebelled. They evolved. They look and feel human. Some are programmed to think they are human, perhaps even podcast hosts. There are many copies, and they have a plan. So now, dear listeners, as Galactica and its ragtag fleet ventured across the cosmos, so have we voyaged through season upon season of the single greatest television show to ever grace the galaxy, and now find ourselves much like that grand ship orbiting our final destination. You know, the good one, and not that burned-out cinder where Ty took a swim. It's now time for their final five to be... What? Wait, excuse me, what? We only have 4 shows. Well, that's kind of inconvenient. I mean, the final 5 was part of the show. So we only got 4. That's going to suck, I'm telling you. Okay, fine, I'll continue. So now, it's time for us to reveal our final 4 episodes from Battlestar Galactica in this, episode 99, All Along the Bracket. I am your Uncle Todd, and with me, as always, is the man who once discovered the secret of resurrection, but then stayed up too late playing Civilization and completely forgot to write it down. He has been my partner in idiocy for over 2 decades, and has now condemned the human race to certain doom. I give you the man they call Tim.
Greetings and salutations, my friend. How are you?
You know, I'm doing all right. And yourself, sir?
I am well. I'm doing well.
That's good.
I'm
always glad. Oh,
Cannot complain.
That's good because I don't really want to listen to it anyways.
All right.
And he immediately goes away from the mic.
Understandable.
Screw you, I'm going home.
I'm trying to muck in my settings here. They're all screwed up. They're all screwed up.
What are you doing over there, sir? We take 1 week off, and you're all of a sudden like, which end of the microphone do I talk into? What is this computer? What is this thing? It's a mouse. Ah!
What am I doing?
Did I just poop my pants?
Normally, I can hear myself in my headphones, and I can't. So now everything sounds softer. You know, I have to like talk louder, and so of course I'm going to probably keep the household up while we do this, but that's all right.
You normally do that anyways.
Anywho, but yeah, it's been a minute or two since we've last chatted and pontificated and revelated and debated, and now we're back at it, my friend. So I am rejuvenated and looking forward to the adjudication, if you will, of the final 4 of our BSG bracket.
Oh my gosh, the Nipsey Russell routine. I forgot how much.
Got it written down on my legal pad.
Oh my gosh. You had that written down? That was scripted?
No, not the whole thing. Just the words. I wove them together in some sort of masterful sort of narrative. But anyways,
I thought you were like the Mick Foley of promos here. Never write a thing down. Just go from your gut, go from your soul, and here you have notes. An illusion shattered.
Well, you know, when trying to do the Nipsey Russell, I was stalling out after word 2, so I at least had to, write down 4 or 5 to at least make it sound somewhat interesting. So
okay, well, fair enough. Before we get into our topic at hand, we do have a little something that we like to call the Week in Geek. It's little bits and baubles and fits and foibles of information and other geek-like substances and news that not quite ready for its own episode, but we like to address it in a little something we call the Week in Geek. However, before we do that, we do have another sponsor. This episode of Week in Geek is sponsored by Chris Rock's Iron Chin. When there's an award show you need to host and a chance of someone walking out on stage to seek revenge for a joke, you need more than just a stiff upper lip. You need Chris Rock's Iron Chin, debuting in 2022 with 3 strengths: regular, Will Smith, and Mike Tyson. For those nights when you really want to cut loose but still be standing after a good hard slap, turn the other cheek with Chris Rock's Iron Chin.
Can we help Steven get a peek?
Week
Feels so funky.
Oh, jeez. And here I thought we were going to be an oasis from all of that.
Go figure. We take a week off, and the slap heard around the world happens. Will Smith decides to lose his mind, and we're nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be found. We would have been right on time for that, to be right in the middle of it, and yet no, we were sitting at home. Oh well.
Can I just say how much stuff can happen in the 1 week we decided to take off? Okay.
A whole lot. Everything. Everything happened.
You have that. And then on the other hand, sadly enough, you have the passing of Taylor Hawkins, which you're just like, what the heck happened? You know, it just kind of came out of nowhere. Oh, my gosh.
That's just ruinous. Absolutely ruinous. And then, of course, I was even loath to mention the Chris Rock, Will Smith thing just because it was so overplayed. I'm like, we do realize there's other things going on in the world far more important than this, right? We all do realize that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's part of the coping mechanism of humanity is we look at the small and insignificant stuff to have to stop from thinking like, hey, World War III is right around the corner. Sweet.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. But yeah. So anyways, what do we got for the weekend? Talk about a transition there. How about what else we got for the Weekend Geek here, sir?
Well, other than talking about how our show is, you know, apparently the fulcrum upon which all reality is balanced upon.
Well, we already knew that.
We did have a debut that did take place while we were off.
Yes.
And that would be on the Disney Plus. We have Moon Knight that started off this past Wednesday. And just thought we'd just get a couple reactions, hot takes, if you will, from yours truly and Uncle Todd on our thoughts on this show. It was kooky. It was funny. It was you know, it's I always love how Marvel just seems to continue to find ways to throw other curveballs at us and just new ways of storytelling. So with that, sir, what were your thoughts on the initial episode of Moon Knight?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great introduction for the character. I thought the cold open with Ethan Hawke's character was very well done. Like, kind of sets you up right off the bat with the antagonist rather than the protagonist, and which is very fitting for a show where even the protagonist doesn't understand exactly who in the hell he is. At the beginning of the show, which I thought was great. I think Oscar Isaacson has been just fantastic in this. He's managing to pull off that whole character and then also discovering more about himself. I thought it was really well done. And I think anybody who is I had one Facebook friend who happened to say that he thought it was the best debut of a Marvel show ever yet, and I'm like, I don't know about that, but it was really well done. I think
very unique.
Yeah, which is what Marvel has done a really good job of since they've started putting stuff on the Plus, is finding a way for each show to have its own identity right off the bat. Like you instantly know when you're watching WandaVision. You instantly know when you're watching, Falcon and Winter Soldier. You know you kind of get that vibe right away.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they did it with this. Like it's a very different sort of show, and I dug it a lot. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah.
And how about yourself, sir?
Yeah, basically very very similar thoughts. Liked how like the cold open with the glass and the feet and the uncomfortable and the awkward and just being like, I
think you're underselling it when you're saying uncomfortable. Why don't you go ahead and break a glass and pour half into one of your shoes?
Jeez, watching that foot go into the shoe, I was just like, even at 46 years old, you just kind of like, I can't watch it. Just stop it. It's like, ow. I feel like, Professor Frink from The Simpsons, just like, oh my gosh. But no, Oscar Isaac was, of course, at his always best. And
did
just,
I say Oscar Isaacson?
No, I thought you said Oscar. You might have said Isaacson, and I
think I said Isaacson. It's Isaac. Is it Oscar?
It's
Isaac?
Oscar Isaacs. Yeah.
I don't know why I did that, but
you know, phenomenal.
Sorry, Oscar.
Phenomenal acting job, and you know, just playing those two sides. I'm interested to see. I kind of feel like we have more than one voice kind of going on in his head, because there's that initial voice that sounds like I can't think of the actor's name, but he was the nasty teacher in what was it called, Whiplash. I can't think of, and he played J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man movies.
No, it's not J.K. Simmons. It's F. Murray Abraham.
Oh, okay, but the voice that was like, you know, the idiots, you know, taking over.
Which I really enjoy how we as the audience get no more information than that character has as he's going along. Like, it just cuts out, and then we come back right when he comes back, and we have no idea how in the hell he just killed that dude, and how you just see him fall off the back of the van. Like, all the, like, it just comes back. Now he's driving backwards. Like, there's something about that is kind of refreshing, that you're not getting all the information right off the bat. And and especially, like, even when he's looking up at the castle, he's waving, and then the guy waves at him before he starts to shoot at him. Like, it's just such an awkward thing, but it fits that character so perfectly.
It does. Yeah, sorry, you'll have to edit that out, because I was messing around with my controls again. Sorry.
Jeez. No, I'm not editing that out. I'm keeping that in. I am keeping that in.
Well, folks, now you get to see how the sausage is made. So,
you know what? They've been eating the sausage this long. I mean, 99 episodes. They're pretty sure that it's nothing but, you know, tails and hoofs and whatnot.
Indeed. But yeah, no, I think this was a great, you know, introduction, and like you said, it's you know, it's funny. I've been watching on YouTube. You know, there's more and more clips of Dune, you know, kind of popping up for the movie that came out in the fall, and just the masterful storytelling that happened with that movie, and like you said, you know, they're not over explaining things. You're just seeing things happen, and you're going along for the ride, and you're going to learn as you go, and it's you know, it's just kind of you know, good storytelling at its best, you know, with that sort of approach. You know, when you get into a place where things are over explained, it gets a little long in the tooth, and you know, kind of kills I think the magic of what's going on screen. And so I really like the fact that it's, you know, just kind of this slow roll introduction into what's going on with him, and you know, we don't get full answers, and just that ending shot of you know, him as Moon Knight just kind of walking into the camera was very reminiscent of the of one of the BSG. I think it's season 2, episode 1, when the Raider crashes into Galactica, and you have the Cylons walking off the Raider, and just into the camera. Very, very similar shot. So I thought,
into your living room, ladies and gentlemen.
Indeed. So yeah. Overall, I think it was a very solid outing for its debut, and I'm excited to see where this bad boy takes us.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that is, and I haven't heard a whole lot, because honestly I haven't read a whole lot on Moon Knight reactions and all that. I think the reaction is overall positive, but you know that there's going to be some negativity out there.
Always.
And because there was people who didn't like WandaVision, there's people who didn't like, you know, Falcon and Winter Soldier. They just this blah 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 blah, and it's like, there's some people you're just not going to please. And I think that at a certain point too, like, you have to understand, like, it is just entertainment. You know, sort of like when people were kind of poo-pooing Eternals, like, it's just a movie. Like, it doesn't have to change your life. It's okay. It's okay if you just walk in, you see it, and you're like, hey, that was fun, and that's it. It's okay. Yep. It's okay. Yep. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next episodes, and now I've found myself going from, like, at a point where I was watching, like, I had no shows going on, I had no things to keep track of, to now I've got, like, multiple shows that I'm trying to keep track of and stay up to date on, and it's driving me nuts now, because I'm so not of that existence anymore. Like, must see TV is way in my rearview mirror, and now I'm like, crap, I gotta stay up with my shows.
I got my stories.
Yeah. Oh, I'm exhausted just thinking about it. And yes, I am old. Man. I am old. Oh, well, but yeah,
Indeed
I'm looking forward to that one.
Indeed we are. All right. Well, we will swing away from Moon Knight and over into the land of Doctor Who and the roving telephone box that is called the TARDIS. We have an article unearthed by Uncle Todd, not the man they call Tim. This is his contribution to the Week in Geek, but a familiar actress to us all, if you're familiar with the Marvel Universe, Karen Gillan, if I said it correctly, is very interested in a potential Doctor Who return, in parentheses, with the right co-stars. So, kind of the anti-Star Trek situation. where it's been sprung upon them, and they're like, all right, yeah, why not? In this case,
they're gonna make another one. No one's ever called me. That's great, and it's starting to shoot like next month. Really? Oh well, that's gonna be an interesting negotiation.
Oh, good Lord. But yeah, so apparently Karen Gillan was in 2010 kind of plucked out of obscurity and brought into Doctor Who alongside the 11th Doctor, one Matt Smith. And so she was discussing recently an interest in getting back into that world if the right opportunity presented itself, especially if it's with Matt Smith again. So it was just kind of an interesting article from sci-fi.com where she talks about, just that her time with the franchise, and then, her coming back for a short cameo in 2013, but how that kind of launched her into other areas like Jumanji and Guardians of the Galaxy and so forth. So just an interesting little blurb from someone who we probably haven't heard from in a little bit here, not since Marvel had its Avengers Endgame final outing. But what are your thoughts, sir, on one Miss Karen Gillan moving back into the Doctor Who universe?
I'd be all for it. I mean, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name now. I've got to try and
Dr. Zhivago.
Yeah, that's it. Let's see here. What was the guy's name? Tom Baker.
There we go.
So he was like, I don't remember which number Doctor he would be, but back in the 80s when I started watching like PBS or whatever, and they would have all the British shows and stuff, and you would catch stuff there. That was kind of my first introduction to Doctor Who, was Tom Baker, the dude with the scarf, and that was my Doctor, because that was just always seemed to be, those shows were on when I would catch them. It was always his version of the Doctor, and then kind of didn't watch Doctor Who for a while, and then when I started watching again, Matt Smith was the Doctor, and oddly enough, kind of Matt Smith replaced Tom Baker as my Doctor, because I got back into the show in a big bad way during Matt Smith's run, and I thought he was an incredible Doctor Who. It was just wacky and was also kind of like, managed to not do, the Doctor Who's always kind of like this kind of weird character, because he can kind of seem, I don't want to say nefarious, but dangerous,
Yeah.
the people, and for the people around him, because it doesn't usually fare that well for him. The Doctor can regenerate, but the people around him not so much, because they'll just get squashed like an intergalactic bug from time to time. But it was also because of Karen Gillan and as Amy Pond that I really got into the show, because it was just her energy on screen and her personality and that character on screen was just like, I just wanted to see that character more and more, and I just thought she was great. And I forget the actor's name who played her boyfriend Rory, and it was this weird little triangle between the three of them, and all the way through, and that was also the time when the showrunner really did a lot of these like long arc stories, and just the way that Amy Pond and Rory's story arc finished was very emotional, which is, it was really well done, I think. Yeah. And I would be all for that, and I can totally see why it would be. It has to be with Rory, it has to be with Matt Smith, because those three really go together. They were almost inseparable. That like once after a certain period of time. And Amy Pond was part of the show. Like then Rory became part of the show, and then it was just the three of them, and it had to be the three of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it would be a great thing. I don't think it would happen long term, but I mean, they've in Doctor Who, it's almost as much as like in any other franchise, there is so much more opportunity for an actor to come back in Doctor Who because you're dealing with time and all these weird things, and just stuff happens, and it's great when it does, because you get weird things like different doctors interacting, and even Tom Baker managed to come out of retirement and play a part in one of the later Matt Smith episodes, and it was touching. It was wonderful. It was great. So I'm all for that. I don't know if it would happen, but I've got my fingers crossed for it for certain.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we hope to see Miss Gillan. Darn it, I wrote it the wrong way on our notes, so I said it the wrong way. I'm telling
you, she's going to mess you up, man.
Oh, man.
You've seen her. She does dance fighting in Jumanji, so you better watch out.
Oh,
you hear music, just run. Just run.
Good Lord. Well, we hope to see a reunion of sorts in the Doctor Who universe between those parties. And then finally, and yes, for those wondering what happened to Star Wars Red 5, well, quite frankly, the man they call Tim totally forgot about putting it together today. So much to Uncle Todd's celebratory nature and tone, he probably sounds like he has a little, bounce in his step, and that is because he is not required tonight to partake in the Star Wars Red 5. We will bring that back. We will have a 100th episode extravaganza, I promise you, next episode for that.
I'm telling you, folks, prayers actually do get answered. I've been praying fervently that book would just spontaneously combust. And I didn't get that one, but close enough. I'm taking what I can.
Oh, goodness. But this past weekend, WrestleMania, WWE having its weekend extravaganza, since I use that word.
The showcase of the immortals.
No less than 5 minutes. And yes, the showcase.
Not so much so in some cases.
Good Lord. Well, if you are a fan of this show and have listened to us for quite some time, you will know that in the past we have done we've done a couple WrestleMania review episodes, and we did not do one this year because, quite frankly, we are both unenthused and just not tightly engaged with the current crop of stories and characters that Vince and company are putting forth in the product.
However, after saying all that, Tim's going to talk about it for the next 20 minutes. So buckle up, Buttercup.
The
Here
man
it
they call
comes.
no, not 20 minutes. This will be quick. The man they call Tim does still retain his account with the Peacock Network, and was browsing around and saw that there was WrestleMania Part 1 on Saturday night, and so I took in just a really well done match between Seth Rollins and his mystery opponent, former AEW superstar and returning back into the fold, Cody Rhodes, full garb, full American Nightmare character that he had in AEW, and it was very cool to see the reaction. I was kind of curious to see if he would get kind of the reactions he was getting in AEW, which was quite honestly a chorus of boos. And the place just erupted when his music hit, and it was just very cool, to see him come back and get that kind of accolade, and then to see him and Rollins put on just an absolute clinic of a match was just incredible. It's not going to be a Steamboat Savage sort of comparison, but because rarely are matches that good, but this was well done, and both guys just laid it all out, for the audience, with Rhodes coming out on top, even busting out a good old Dusty Rhodes spinning bionic elbow from back in the day.
Nice.
It was fantastic. And just some incredible maneuvers. I mean, Rollins, he brings the A game every match, and this one was no exception. So that was very cool. And then I did watch the replay on Sunday of the return of Stone Cold Steve Austin, supposedly for the Kevin Owens show, which was really just some sort of vehicle to get them into some sort of brawly kind of match that I guess was Steve Austin's last match because there was a referee involved. But I will say the most impressive spot of that match was Steve Austin at 50 plus years old, taking a full-on suplex onto the concrete floor.
What?
They brawled out into the crowd, and Kevin Owens suplexed him right onto the concrete floor of the walkway near the crowd. And Austin was wearing a shirt, so I don't know if he had some padding underneath there or not, but my goodness, that he took the full brunt of that. And
I'm going to guess he has to, because he's had, neck problems is not the word for what he's got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it was a very well done brawl. I did say to Uncle Todd though that understandably, Austin's timing a little bit on the slow side at times. What do you expect? I mean, the man's been away for 19 years and has aged that amount as well. And so, but still, it was still an entertaining brawl between the two. KO, Kevin Owens just selling the bejesus out of everything. I mean, it was so fun to watch him. Austin just breaks out a clothesline, and he's doing the old flipperoonie, like when he lands. I mean, just makes it look like $1 million. But in the end, it was a errant placed chair shot to the top rope that ricocheted back into Kevin Owens' head and stunned him for Stone Cold to get the opening to land the stunner and put him away 1, 2, 3, and then to proceed to pound about 12 beers afterwards.
Of course.
So, oh my gosh. So that was entertaining. And then last night I had to, because I'm a sucker for any sort of title unification bout, and we had one with Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns for the 15th time on this planet. And sadly, this one was a bit of a letdown for such a promoted match. I was expecting there to be, a crescendo of action and just a really well done ending to it. Maybe having Reigns look a little more of a dominant champion than he has in the past with his matches with Lesnar. But no, it was more of the same. And Lesnar just, suplexed the bejesus out of him, and then finally Reigns just popped off a spear out of nowhere and pins him, and that was the match, and that was it. I was just kind of like, really, that's how you finish your title unification bout, a pin out of nowhere.
The only way that actually works with that many matchups, and I didn't realize they fought that many times, but
I made 15. I'm making up. It was probably I think they've done. Reigns has done 6 WrestleMania main events, and I think 4 or 5 of them have been with Lesnar.
Okay, but I mean, regardless of, if they've faced each other that many times, the only way that works, especially the way it would have been beautiful to work in terms of a unification bout, would have been that, say, like, one of the stipulations is whoever wins, like, there's no return match, there's no comeback, and by the way, for the next 2 years, you can't fight me,
right?
Which would have at least then made it interesting for Lesnar to then have to chase, but using proxies and trying to like worm his way in. That could have been intrigue and that sort of thing, or even in the reverse direction where you have Roman Reigns playing a very calculating, mastermind sort of character. If he had lost, then having to try and find his way to get the titles, and it could have been much more. But no, we don't take that. We're just it's a match, and and a spear out of nowhere, and that's it. Like, yeah, it's not taking that next step. It's it's lazy storytelling, lazy booking, and it's like, the whole, just looking at the card for this whole weekend, I was not tempted in the least to renew my Peacock membership. And that's like what? I mean, it's like $8.
Right.
It's under $10. It's less than what an old school pay-per-view would have cost.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So I mean, I could have popped that back on for the weekend and then just watched the show, and I wasn't even tempted for that. Because I looked at it and I was listening to one of Corny's bits on YouTube, and he made an excellent point. He's like, once upon a time, when they had the Von Erichs and this and that, they had a match that needed a stadium. And he says, and after you have that match that needs a stadium, then every year after that, you have a stadium that needs a match. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with WrestleMania. At one point, you needed 2 nights because you had you had 2 main events and you had so many other big matches. So you split up over 2 nights. I'm sure money factored into it, but now that's the expectation every year. Now you have to come up with a card for the 2 nights. You have a stadium. You're announcing for your football stadiums now. You got to have a 2-nighter, and just judging by what was on tap, they don't know how to book 2 nights of compelling wrestling because they didn't have the U.S. title. They didn't have the Intercontinental title defended whatsoever, which is ridiculous. Those are your 2 secondary belts below your 2 heavyweight champion belts, like the 2 biggest belts that you're unifying. You don't have anything below there. I think you had both of the men's tag titles were defended, but they were both in like 3 ways. And then in the over in women's territory, you have Ronda Rousey and Flair, and then you had Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch. I don't know how any of those matches go, but then you've got some of your other biggest female stars are not even involved in those. You've got them slammed into one tag match,
right?
That kind of was from the appearance of it was kind of meh. I mean, you're just, and then you've got your 2 celebrity-ish matches. And to me, it's just like you're wasting a bunch of time here that you could actually do something with the players that you've got. Like, you're paying all these people money to be wrestlers, and yet you've got Johnny Knoxville out there.
Yep.
And I get it. Like, okay, entertainment tie-in, blah, 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 but you ain't got nobody else out there? Like, you ain't got anyone else that can come in and do some stuff? I mean, you couldn't have booked this thing a little bit better? Like, it's just, to me, it's ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising to me. Like, the one thing that I've seen from, and I was just watching this before we got on here. You're talking about, Owens selling for Austin. The sell of the night was Austin Theory selling the stunner from Stone Cold, because he was Rock-esque in his sell of the stunner, because Dwayne Johnson always went over the top, like way over the top when he would get stunned. Austin Theory actually might have outdone The Rock. His sell on the stunner. Go ahead and I don't know. Did you see that at all?
No, I actually didn't see that.
Okay, go and look that one up, and you tell me afterwards on next week if you believe that he outdid The Rock, because to me it was phenomenal. It was a beautiful thing.
Nice.
It's ridiculousness. Like, the man managed to take the stunner, did like 2 flips, like 2 flips, and then spun himself out of the ring. It was amazing. I was like, the physics involved here, I haven't seen anything like that since Wile E. Coyote. It's crazy. But that's I didn't have to pay 1 red cent for that. It was on YouTube. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. But yeah,
there you
go. Sad.
Indeed. And then I'd be remiss if I did not mention on Friday evening there was the Hall of Fame ceremony, which I have yet to take in, but of note, The Undertaker was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, as well as the Steiner brothers, Queen Sharmell, Booker T's wife, and Vader was also inducted as well. So
partial namesake of the man they called him, because that was Vader's gimmick. That's the man they call Vader.
It's time. It's Vader time.
No, it's not even that cool. Like,
well, yeah,
it's time. I mean, you could barely understand it. It's like, does he have asthma? What's going on? Is he choking? And if he's choking, like that could be like half of a pig that he's choking on. Like I don't know. We need like 5 people in order to do the Heimlich maneuver on Leon because I mean you can't quite get around him. Like that's it.
They could have recorded that while he was down in some barbecue. So
actually it's probably Waffle House. Let's be honest.
That's true. That's true. But yeah.
Whose order is up? It's time. It's Vader's order.
And now we know where Vader time came from. Uncle Todd has revealed the secrets of Big Van Vader.
I just picture like one of those, like the trays, like so when I used to wait tables, you have the big old gigantic tray that you can put like 8 plates on. Like they just use that as Leon's plate. And they came out with like waffles and pancakes and bacon and sausage and grits and everything just piled high on it. And he just sat there and just inhaled it as Cornette sat there drinking a Sprite after Sprite after Sprite, cheeseburger after cheeseburger. The two of them. Can you imagine those two in a car together after a meal like that? Like the gaseous emissions, like you couldn't even see into the car. It's just green fog inside the car.
Lord. Yeah,
and Corny cussing as he goes down the highway. You know what? I want that. Forget Young Rock. I want that as a TV show. I just want the adventures of Uncle Corny and Vader. Somebody get NBC on the phone right now. I've got a new show.
He does, Uncle Todd.
I'm telling you, it's just money. It's just money waiting to be made.
Indeed.
Anyways, what were we talking about again? I've completely lost where we are in the show.
No. So we're wrapping it up now.
Oh, okay.
And so that was the Wrestlemania weekend update, brought to you by The Week in Geek,
which was brought to you by Chris Rock's Iron Chin. Give me a little ha-ha.
I was just going to say, can we get Stevie a peek, please?
Can we get Stevie a peek and a jab combo? That's what we need.
Good Lord.
You know what? I have never, ever thought about getting scalp tickets for a comedy show.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris Rock was playing in Boston.
That's right.
Thursday and Friday after, like immediately following the Academy Awards. And I was like, night one, I kind of want to be there to see what the first half hour of that show is. Like, is he just going out there and going, I've got my bits all done, but now I got a few things I got to get off my chest tonight. Like, this is a one time only, folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Interesting.
I think what happened was he came out. He's like, "So how was your weekend?"
Yeah. I think that's exactly what he did. I think. Oh my gosh.
Oh boy. Anywho, well, thank you, sir, for all of that digging and all of that cultivating of the Week in Geek. Certainly appreciate it. Which brings us now to our final 4. This is it, folks. We are getting down to cutting time here at Free Range Idiocy. We have been going through the past 4 episodes, 4 regions, ladies and gentlemen, 65 episodes of television that we have whittled down now to the final 4 episodes for each of us. My sweet God. And it only took about 83 hours of podcasts in order to get there. If you're feeling extraordinarily brave, go back and listen to all of those. I can't promise that you'll be entertained, but you'll probably feel sorry for our families for having to be around us as much as they are after listening to us for that amount of time. However, here are the final 4 for both of us. We have Lay Down Your Burdens and Blood on the Scales, Crossroads, and Bastille Day for the man they call Tim.
Mm-hmm.
And for Uncle Todd, we have You Can't Go Home Again, Acts of Contrition, Maelstrom, and Someone to Watch Over Me. And that is it. So
someone to watch over for where there.
Don't
to
know.
Me.
I'm just thinking about how long this show is going to take, and I'm already tired in advance. That's what's happening. My brain's just instantly like, you know what? You're on your own for this one. I can't. I've done enough for you.
So if I could jump in with just a little statistical information for those at home.
Oh my gosh. What do we have now?
So for Uncle Todd, as we have joked about and discussed across these last 4 episodes, he has 3 No, I'm sorry, 4 episodes. All of his final 4 are Katie Sackhoff Starbuck-centered stories. So if you feel the ground beneath you shaking as you continue to listen to this show, do understand that the universe may be collapsing upon itself because he is going to have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side, with my picks, I have 2 two-part season finales, which is probably a little unfair. But I didn't realize this at the time when I concocted all of this. I do have each of my 4 come from a different season of the show. So I have a season 1, a season 2, a season 3, and a season 4. Mm-hmm. I have the potential, much like Uncle Todd, well, it's not a potential, it's an eventuality, to have a final that could be what I like to refer to as the Alpha Zarek versus the Omega Zarek. Meaning I have the debut of Tom Zarek that could face off against the demise of Tom Zarek. So I just want to say we just have some interesting matchups here, ladies and gentlemen, between Uncle Todd and I to decide upon, to adjudicate, to debate, and finally to decide and come to some sort of conclusion on.
Yeah, I just realized as I was going through this last night that I have 2 Starbuck crashing episodes.
So very nice.
In Act of Contrition and in Maelstrom, Starbuck buys the farm. Although in one she really buys the farm, and the other one it's just, oh well, I'm just going to grab this raider and take off out of here. Mm-hmm. The only way this would have worked out even better is if I had managed to then have Daybreak in there, which we didn't because we didn't allow that. But then you would have the almost death, the death, and then the disappearance of Kara Thrace all in play. It would have been that would have rent the universe into right there.
Indeed.
But yes, some very interesting things. So as we've said before, just a quick little ground rules here. We did exclude the miniseries and the finale from our rankings from our show, as well as Razor and The Plan, just because it didn't feel right to have those included, or in the case of the miniseries and the finale, to try and match those up against other episodes, because even the 2-parters, it doesn't even calculate. Like you're just dealing with way too much storytelling in those, and those are kind of their own thing. So we took those out of the equation completely. We had all 2-part episodes were combined into a single episode, so we can get this down to a manageable number. We did have a play-in game in Region 3, so if you want to go back and listen to that hoot, that was interesting. But
it was a barn burner. It was a barn burner, ladies and gentlemen.
The stealth play-in game, because we had Hero going up against Flight of the Phoenix, as a matter of fact. So 2 stealth fighters. Again, the parallels were just amazing here in the BSG bracket. But now we have finally gotten to our final 4, and we are going to determine which episode is the bestest of them all for both of us, which is very weird. I don't know about you, but I found that this has been an interesting exercise, because it's not like you can just go through and just pick your favorites. Like, we've had to have these matchups through the bracket, so it makes it that much more interesting, because there's somewhere you're like, oh wow, I wouldn't have, like, I don't know if I would have necessarily picked all 4 of these as my favorite. Yeah, but with the way the bracket fell, like, that's just kind of how it worked, you know.
It's shocking to me. It's shocking to me that 33 did not make it this far. Like, for as much as you and I gush over that episode and feel like it is like a masterpiece of television and storytelling, it didn't make it because it was in such a competitive bracket that we had to make some tough choices, and sadly that one had to fall to the wayside, unfortunately.
Well, and it's also the difference between what is technically great and what is emotionally weighty for you, and ultimately some of this and a lot of this comes down to emotion and what I think both of us have kind of grabbed a hold of and glommed onto with these episodes. And 33, I still maintain, is quite possibly the greatest debut episode for a series. And it had a helping hand, because when you have an entire miniseries as a setup. But 33 was an amazing episode because it threw you right into the action. It got you, put you in this situation, and it raised the stakes from what had been an Armageddon event, like, which is tough to do. Like you're actually managing to raise stakes from, hey, guess what? Almost the entire human race has been wiped out. Well, how do you get more stakes than that? Well, let me show you. So you get into this. That made it remarkable. Oh, wait a minute. We have a special guest on the podcast for the first time ever.
Katie Sackhoff?
No, it would be my wife. Who?
There we go.
She has never listened to any of the episodes, but she might actually be able to contribute something here.
I'm not your demographic.
Wow. Thanks, honey. Appreciate it. That is lovely. But she brought me treats, so all is forgiven.
There we go.
Oh, cheese bread. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Uncle Todd.
Very nice. Very nice.
Anywho.
The door shuts.
Yeah. And we out. But yeah, it's technically great, but ultimately when you put it up against other episodes or just what resonated emotionally, you have to make a choice. And as great as that episode is from a technical standpoint, it just didn't quite weigh out against some of the other emotional aspects that I personally had to make choices about.
Yeah. I agree.
Oh, I got cheesy garlic bread. So good.
That's great. Oh, wonderful. I have to listen to this guy like lip smacking, all the.
Oh my gosh, that one
this
bite
garlic, this cheese.
It has like a half a stick of butter in that one bite. Oh my gosh.
Did your heart palpitate?
No, but my cholesterol just shot up 80 points just from licking it.
Oh dear!
Wow!
Well, I guess
that was amazing.
While Uncle Todd is going forth and eating his cheesy garlic bread, I thought we would just briefly cover as well the themes for each bracket. I believe our first bracket was oh gosh, I got to go back.
It was the Sinus Memorial bracket, wasn't it?
This is Sinus Memorial bracket. Second bracket was the Chief Tyrrell bracket. All hail the Chief, I believe, is what we called it.
Something like that. Either that or Chief Smash. It was one of the two. Chief Mad, Chief Smash.
Okay, I have that in my notes on my legal pad. I wrote down something about Chief going Hulk Smash on.
You and your legal pad, man.
I tell you, this is serious business.
The man they called Tim is a very technical, digitally minded human being, and yet he has a series of legal pads out in front of him right now.
Well, just one, several pages, but just one.
I'm picturing like a big old map with like the yarn connecting points and that sort of thing.
Well, it's a calculation that one must make here. I mean, this is a very important decision.
Oh, I just had another bite of cheesy bread. Oh, so
good Lord.
You're gonna be able to smell the garlic through the microphone.
Probably, yeah. Be like, oh, sweet Moses, carbs, sweet carbs.
Oh yeah, that's right. And they call Tim on his like 3 grams of carbs per month.
Yeah, basically. Good Lord.
Oh, it's the first of the month. I can have a Ritz cracker, just one.
Well, do you want me to start
I
in
feel
with...
bad for you, but I've been gluten-free for so long. I'm like, screw it. Suffer like me. I don't care.
Oh, no, fair enough. Would you like me to start chatting about my first matchup?
Well, let me kind of go through these because I just want to make sure people know about these shows. So I'll do a quick summary on yours.
All right.
So Lay Down Your Burdens is a 2-parter. With the presidential elections weeks away, a new discovery could turn the entire election around. Meanwhile, Starbuck leads a team back to Caprica to rescue the resistance fighters. With the elections underway, Starbuck returns from her mission along with a Cylon who delivers an unexpected message to Adama and Roslin. And then Blood on the Scales goes a little something like this. President Roslin faces off against Tom Zarek and Lieutenant Gaeta as they try to take control of the Colonial Fleet. The alliance with the rebel Cylons as well as Adama's life are both at stake. So what was your thought process on having to like put these two against each other?
Well, I've written down a lot of notes, so we're going to be here for a while.
Oh boy! Somebody put a pot of coffee on. I just popped in some more cheesy bread.
So when you look at, you have to factor many things when you compare these two, and again, it's a hard decision. Especially it's in some ways unfair because Blood on the Scales is a probably smaller scale than Lay Down Your Burdens, which was a 2-parter plus being a series finale. So there's a extra heft kind of built into it. I tried to break it down into story streams that existed and tried to evaluate the weight of them to see if maybe there'd be an obvious answer, and there wasn't, of course, but it was fun doing it.
The way you're edging
nonetheless.
around this makes me think that you had so much bourbon last night you can't make out your notes right now, and you're desperately trying to stall while you're trying to decipher your own writing.
Because
you're you're circling around this thing multiple times, nibbling around the edges. I'm like, Are we gonna get to this? Let me set up to my preamble, and then
I'm more trying to provoke you into this sort of reaction. So,
okay, well, good on you.
But as we have discussed, lay down your burdens. The season 2 season finale. Really getting into the tail end of the election between Baltar and Rosalind, the revelation of this habitable planet that they can now potentially settle on, and Zarek rearing his head and kind of turning it into an election issue that starts to steer the course of the direction of the voting in Baltar's direction. You have Baltar in his continued little tryst with Gina, and what that turns into later on. As we just joked about, Chief Tyrrell goes all Hulk smash on Callie. And yet afterwards they fall in love.
But the whole thing with Baltar and Jean, that is one of those. It's just one of those classic stories of man falls in love with robot, decides, how do I express my love? Here's a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Ain't it always the way?
It is.
Tale as old as time, I tell you.
Well, and again, the irony being that once again, where they find themselves, kind of at the end of this episode, is really in large part due to Baltar. So,
not in large part, it is directly because of Baltar.
Yes. Because if he doesn't give her the nuclear warhead, she doesn't set it off, and they don't find them.
There you have it.
So yes, and of course we have the debut of Cavill. This I believe is the first appearance of Cavill.
Really?
Which I was surprised by, because I thought, because part 1 contains the whole sequence where Tyrrell has the nightmare or dream, he's sleepwalking, like he's going to throw himself off the scaffold. And that is the debut. I thought for some reason that happened in an earlier episode, but apparently it happens in part 1 of this one.
Well, because of the plan and
all that kind of your perception.
Yeah, I automatically think about Cavill as being there right from the beginning, but
right.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Yeah, just realizing that. Wow.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep. And then, of course, the coup de grace that we jump to a little over a year later, after they settle on what they call New Caprica. We see.
Isn't that's just that's bad juju right there. What happened to the original Caprica?
It'd go boom.
It's sort of like when someone's like, hey, yeah, we're gonna actually they are building it. Like the dude's building a replica Titanic and gonna take it along the same route. And I'm like, ain't no way in hell you get me on that boat. No, it'd be like the same like Titanic 2 or Nuova Titanic. No.
I think I want to call it the new Little Bighorn.
Yeah, that what could possibly go wrong?
Of course. Yes. So we jump ahead, and we have a bit of a time jump, and we see Rosalind is teaching. We see Baltar has turned Colonial 1 into his love nest, and Gaeta is his underling,
his den of inequity.
Yes, Anders is married to Starbuck, but is apparently suffering from pneumonia. Starbuck and Apollo aren't talking anymore, and all of a sudden the Cylons appear and essentially occupy New Caprica. And we have, as we discussed in the prior episode, the amazing ending of this one, where you have the Cylons ending up as occupiers, as overlords, if you will, of the Caprican folk. And so, this one made it out of Region 1 because of all of the episodes, I felt, given the weight of this, it just really carried a lot of consequence for where the story was heading. It carried a lot of interesting, storytelling in and of itself in terms of the election with Rosalind. This is kind of the first time that we see Rosalind really do wrong. And even though it was one of those ends justifies the means sort of situations, because she was very petrified of what it was going, what a Baltar presidency was going to mean for them, and her suspicions of him being responsible for why they're in that situation in the first place. That whole back and forth was very interesting, and then seeing her just kind of resign to the loss and handing the reins over was, like on a lot of levels, this really disrupted the kind of status quo of the show, because now we had Baltar in a leadership role that way. And then to go and do the time jump and to kind of see the results of those things, where everything is, kind of what you would expect with Baltar at the helm. The Tyrol is leading up the unions to strike against the poor conditions that they're working under. Baltar doesn't care about anyone but himself and whatever hookers he has in the Colonial One, and basically everything just kind of is falling apart. And of course, prior to this time jump is when Gina sets off the warhead and destroys Cloud 9, and any subsequent ships that were within the blast radius, which is really the marker that kind of helps the Cylons find them. And so it flows so nicely. It was a great way to kind of bring season 2 to a close and do it in a way where it's very unsettling. They're not in space the way that we are used to them being. All the characters are in very different kind of scenarios and situations than we've seen them in before. Starbuck and Apollo are not in a Viper. They are not, in any position to do any of the normal things that they do. And so I really like this episode, and it's why it made it out of Region 1. But I have to compare it to Blood on the Scales, and this is where this has been a tough one. I've gone back and forth just even in the last 30 minutes with which one to select, because Blood on the Scales, you've already done the summary of it, correct?
Yes.
Blood on the Scales is the...
Thank you for listening, by the way. I really appreciate the fact that you have no idea whether I did that or not. It really makes me feel like a significant part of the show.
I was trying to decipher my chicken scratch on the legal pad, so sorry if my focus is a little bit off on other things.
The bourbon spilled. What's his wet spot? Is that the eye of Jupiter? Or is that just a wet mark? I don't know.
Oh, yes, indeed. But yes, so we have this, as we call this in whatever prior episode where we talked about this one, is the tale of the fall or the tragedy of Felix Gaeta, I believe is what we called it.
Yes.
And so we have, Gaeta and Zarek running an insurrection of the fleet and basically trying to consolidate their power in this episode. This actually spanned 2 episodes, and this is obviously the second of the 2 in this arc. You have Apollo and Starbuck doing their darndest to organize the resistance and save Ty and Adama and really halt and thwart what's going on. This, of course, is where we have Madame Airlock, who thinks Adama is dead and is in love with him, declaring for all the universe to hear that she will wreak holy and heavenly vengeance upon all who have spat at her. Spat, I spit at thee.
I'm coming for all of you.
just Mary McDonnell at her finest in this one,
and actually,
ladies and gentlemen.
Unless I'm misremembering this, there is one moment when I think it's Caprica 6 is in the control, because she's saying that she's doing that whole monologue from the base star.
Yes.
And Caprica 6, or I think it's A6. I believe it's Caprica 6. Mm-hmm. As she's like just going off, and then I'm coming for all of you. Like there's this kind of like sly smile, like, oh my gosh, which to me is almost like, wow, she really loves this guy, and like, oh my gosh, this is frightening.
Yeah.
and I helped to annihilate an entire species, and this woman is scaring me.
Yeah.
Like anyone else have chills? Because I do.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So So what else do we have here? Let's see. Yeah. So Tyrell sabotages the FTL. So it's like a team effort to overthrow this insurrection. Baltar and Gaeta. So at the end, the insurrection is thwarted. Zarek and Gaeta are taken prisoner and will face the firing squad. And beforehand, Baltar and Gaeta make peace. They, of course, Gaeta back in season 3 stabbed Baltar in the throat, or in the neck, I should say, with a pen, out of anger and frustration for what he had done. So
predating
basically,
John Wick by at least a decade, I'd like to note. Indeed.
It was not John Wick that came up with that, but Felix Gaeta. Yeah. But in the end, both Gaeta and Zarek are executed, and so ends the character arc across 4 seasons of a beloved character who started out as very much doing his duty and as always Johnny on the spot when needed, but over time became disenfranchised, became disconcerted, and decided to try to take his own path with Tom Zarek, and failed miserably. I should also mention Zarek's point of comedy by putting Adama on trial in a kangaroo court, where Romo Lampkin was even he was disgusted with himself for even being in the courtroom. But really the big thing that Zarek pulls off here is really kind of living up to what he represented in Bastille Day, when it became clear that the Quorum of 12 would not accept him as a leader, that he fell back to old habits, if you will, and had them massacred, and really essentially gutting the government of the fleet. So just a lot of heaviness in this one, and so this one made it out of region 2 because of that. Just a lot of emotion, a lot of weight, and really a sad and tragic end to a very beloved character, who, quite honestly, and I think we touched on this when we talked last, was his journey was not misunderstood. There were clearly reasons that made sense for why he felt the way he felt. Not saying an insurrection was the way to go about it, but the
perhaps
fact
a meeting, an email, something
something a little less crazy there, but nonetheless. So blood on the scale. So from these two, actually, should we do your 2 and then we make the picks? Is that how we want to do
No, because
this?
I've already got mine listed here, and you're the one who's got some question marks because you've been holding this out as a big secret. So I want the reveal. Like where are you coming down on this, sir?
Well, what makes this very difficult?
No, this jibba jabba Hannibal.
Rigs.
Okay, we'll just mix and match Lethal Weapon and A-Team. Why not?
Sure.
Screw it.
Of course. What's made this difficult in the past is that Lay Down Your Burdens was such a different kind of an ending, for a season than we had seen on other sci-fi or other fiction shows. And so I just really gravitated to that. I put a lot of weight on that. But when I look at these two, and quite honestly, I feel in the interest of balance that I can't have two-part season finales in the final, because it just doesn't feel right. Unlike Uncle Todd, who desires chaos, I require balance. So, after
I can't even be mad at that because I am an agent of chaos for the purposes of the show. I am an agent of chaos. That's sure. Thank you for noticing. I guess.
Well, I'm just giving credit where credit is due.
Thank you.
So, with all that being said, and after comparing the two, I am in an upset, I feel, because I feel Lay Down Your Burdens is such a solid and well-crafted set of two-part episodes. I'm going to go with Blood on the Scales, making it into the finals in this final four round.
Wow. I did not see that one coming. I really thought you were going to go Lay Down Your Burdens versus Crossroads. It was going to be a duel of season finales, but you've surprised me, sir. As usual, actually. You are very surprised. Much like Adama in his speech in the miniseries. I find myself often as you take a seat next to me, just leaning over and whispering, "You're one surprising son of a bitch." If I had to count the number of times, if I had a nickel for every time I've said that about you, sir, I'd be a rich man. I would be a rich man.
Indeed.
All right. Well, so Blood on the Scales, making it out of your, into your finals, your final two. All right. That's interesting. Very interesting. Well, for me, I have You Can't Go Home Again and Act of Contrition. I'm going to actually approach these in chronological. So this is kind of flip-flop because You Can't Go Home Again came out of Region 1 and Act of Contrition came out of Region 2. But because in order, it just makes more sense because they're back-to-back episodes. I'm going to go with the first one first and the second one second because otherwise I'm going to be confused, and then I don't want to be that much of an agent of chaos because I just don't need that in my life. So, Act of Contrition is summarized thusly. An accident on the hangar deck forces Starbuck to begin training new pilots, bringing back old memories of her training of Zach Adama. And, of course, You Can't Go Home Again follows that immediately. As Starbuck attempts to escape the barren moon she has been stranded on, Adama and Apollo risk everything to find her, putting them at odds with Ty and Rosalind. Now, the interesting thing is here, I just want to, for a moment, I want to speak to you, our listeners, and just say how much we appreciate you listening. And the reason I want to bring this up is because I put a lot of work into this show for you, the people. I went back and I watched all 4 of these shows, my final 4, took copious notes. I just want you to know that I did that, and I care about you, and I care for the quality of the show. Tim, on the other hand, could care less. He did not rewatch the shows, and he just doesn't care as much about you as I do. So I just want you to know that I should be your favorite.
Crickets.
I know. I only say that because okay, quick sidetrack. So my wife, she has this thing about, like, she needs for everyone's pet, she needs to be their pet's favorite. And down to, like, with our cat. So our fat cat, Madame, who has not guested on the show in quite a while. She's because just much like everybody in my life, she's had quite enough of me, and she's like, you go do your thing. But she is obsessed with being every animal's favorite human. And if you know anything about cats, cats don't play that game. Cats choose the human. Humans don't get to choose the cat. And this cat has chosen me. I am the primary favored human. And so, my God, she throws herself at this cat, and it's embarrassing. I'm just like, it's really hard to watch. You just like demean yourself for the purposes of this cat, and she's just, and the cat's just like, meh. She'll, like, feed her treats and all this, and the cat's just like, that's nice, and just walk away.
Are you not entertained?
And then the cat comes over to me, hops up in my lap, and my wife is just looking at me, like, trying to burn a hole in my skull with her eyes because she's like, the cat won't sit on my lap. Why? I must be the favorite. And the cat's like, no, I don't play that. So, anyways, I have no idea where I was going with that. But, I wanted to make myself our listeners' favorites. But as we all know, Tim is the favorite because I'm just a big old jerk. So, Act of Contrition and You can't go home again. My gosh, two really great episodes. One story really carrying across the two. I just always enjoyed this story arc because it really ties back to the miniseries, and I'm a big sucker for anything that ties, like a direct tie back to the miniseries. And this is right when Starbuck is going to head out of Ragnar Anchorage and go scout out and see where the Cylons are, and tells Lee that she passed his brother in basic flight training when he shouldn't have, that he actually failed, and that she passed him because they were in love. And this is like a huge like bombshell in that when you really think about it, in the show, because all of a sudden now you have this rift. I mean, you like up until now, like Apollo's kind of the jerk in this whole thing, and now all of a sudden Starbuck reveals this. You're like, what? And you know, she is very plain about it. And of course, you get that great line of, why are you telling me this now? It's the end of the world, Lee. I think I want to confess my sins, that sort of thing, which tells you gives you so much information on who Starbuck is as a character and a human being, which I thought was great. So then this ties back because now you have this thing where you need new pilots. And guess what? You only have one combat pilot instructor. You only have one training instructor, and that's Starbuck. And she has this big, bad secret that one other person knows, but the most kind of important person in this equation doesn't know. And holy hell, is this going to get awkward real quick. The thing is, what I think is amazing and that I didn't necessarily pick up until I was rewatching this last night is in the very beginning. Number one, the way that they just kind of juxtapose flashbacks and different scenes and different locations in this episode is really interesting because it builds tension in a really kind of organic way, just the way they structure it. So at the beginning, you're seeing the Raptor pilots coming in for his 1,000th landing on the hangar deck, and then you see Lee, Starbuck, and then Adama shows up, and they're going back and forth. But what I hadn't really, I guess, recognized and really thought that much about is Starbuck starts telling the story about Adama's 1,000th landing, because she says to Lee, Adama's son, has he ever told you what happened on his 1,000th landing? And he hasn't. Kara, the person who's been serving with Adama for the past 2, maybe 3 years, knows more about Bill Adama than his son does. Like instantly you get that. It's like, oh my gosh. And it struck me as like, oh wow, that's how awkward is that? You know what I mean? Because at the very beginning of the scene, like you have Kara and Lee are kind of just being goofy kids essentially, and then Dad walks in and finds them. They spill the paint. But that idea, like it shows how close Kara and Adama are, and it's going to amp up the later scene that they have that much more. And I never really caught that in that way. The same as I never really processed when they're showing Zach's funeral. You have off to one side of the coffin, you have Lee and his mother, Adama's ex-wife, the mother of his child who is dead, and on the other side, Adama is standing next to Kara, and ultimately he reaches out to her to comfort her, and Lee is comforting his mother, and I'm like, you couldn't make that any more obvious, because then you have this gulf in the middle between the two of them, which is represented by a coffin. It's like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, you have this whole setup of just how intensely close Kara and Bill Adama are. Yeah. And then you get to the scene because Lee spills the beans and he doesn't know he's spilling the beans because Adama's like, well, yeah, we've talked about it and this and that and the other. And then Lee takes it that step farther. Oh, well, you know what she did for Zach. And now, oh, well, the cat's out the bag. Mm-hmm. And Kara's washed out the nuggets and everything else, and she has to go and face Adama and finds out that he knows, and she has to finally go through the whole thing. And that's the scene where all of a sudden you now understand just how heavy this is because of how close they are. And here's the thing that I want. Part of the reason I kind of wanted to talk about this episode first, anyways, is because I've made a joke about the whole, and I mean rightfully so. You've joked about me having an all Starbuck Final Four, and I've said before. I said, did you get that call sign before or after you got locked in the brig? Which is just, again, it's just such a great, little drop line. But and I've said before, like I'm in the bag for whatever Katie Sackhoff does as an actor. To paraphrase Kevin Smith, if I was recasting Jaws, I'd cast her as the shark. That's how much I believe in her acting abilities. She could pull that off. Yes, she can play the shark, of course. Like, you don't even have to do makeup. She'll do it. She'll make it work. Here's the thing, and I kind of realized it in this episode. With Katie Sackhoff, it isn't that I just believe that she's the character. I believe that she believes that she's the character, and it's that difference of like when you see someone singing a song and they sing the song well, or you see someone sing the song and you actually believe that they believe every single word that they are singing and that it is coming from their heart. That's kind of what I get in this episode, because really in a show of great performances, over the entire run of the entire series, and great acting performances. In this episode, Edward James Olmos and Katie Sackhoff put on a clinic of how to be vulnerable in a not so obvious way. Because I realized just how vulnerable Adama is. Like it just struck me, because maybe I'm just used to kind of later season, later run Adama, where he's a little bit more grizzled, but in this episode he's very tender in a lot of moments, and not that grizzled sort of guy that you see before and after. There's a lot of like vulnerability in there, even when he's talking to Lee, and Lee has just kind of let this cat out of the bag. Like Adama's like, what? Not like in a gruff way, but in a very soft, like, what do you mean? Sort of like you can almost feel like he's like, oh crap, this is going to hurt. I don't want to know this, do I? And then you see in that scene between the two of them, just the vulnerability, because like here is Starbuck, the one person who she feels believes in her and is always going to have her back, and that she respects, and that respects her, and all of this, and realizing that, wow, I'm now in the spot where I never wanted to be in, where this person, I've lost all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is why, in those moments, like the emotion of that scene is amazing to me. You know what I mean? It's just fantastic, and is the reason why this particular episode made it through. But also, those reasons are kind of the reason why I have an all Starbuck Final Four. I just think of, you could definitely look at the entire Battlestar Galactica series as a journey of Starbuck. You could definitely read that, and you could read that with multiple characters, like just their journey through it all. But I think the performance that Katie Sackhoff gave in this show is remarkable, and I think it's one of the highlights of the show, because her character takes so many twists and turns and has so much emotional weight to lift in a lot of these episodes and over the course of seasons. So that's a main reason why that show really got through for me. Of course, you get into, this was, as far as I know, I believe this is the first time we have Coddle smoking in front of a cancer patient, which is again, like, just such great shorthand. It lets you know everything you need to know about that character, because at one point, he's lighting up a cigarette and Rosalind is there like, I have cancer, and she says, do you mind? He's like, yeah, I kind of do, and he continues to puff away. And then she's talking about alternative medicine, and he kind of jokes, he's like, what, you mean prayer? But then, like, going through the whole thing, as he's walking out, like, you can see him get really serious, and he has that whole, like, you might want to seriously consider prayer. Yeah. And then that is the thing that Rosalind, you can see, just freaks her out, because it's like, up until then, it's like, okay, well, you think you're all right, because the person is like just totally gruff and being a jerk. Then all of a sudden, when he gets serious, like, oh, I'm in deep. Yep. It's crazy. And then, of course, you have that moment at the end where Starbuck is going to turn and take on all the Cylons to cover the Nuggets so they can get back. And in that moment, again, you also see why Adama has put up with her, right? Like even in the miniseries when he talks about how she's a great pilot and Ty's like, you always give her a break and this and that, you see why. In the same way that, you know, you see why Ty has managed to make it as an XO as long as he has with Adama. Because when the chip's really down, he's going to make those tough decisions, and he's kind of the guy that Adama needs. In the same way that, you know, Starbuck is every inch the pilot that you've kind of seen, but in this scene now you're like, oh yeah, and this is why she's the instructor. This is why she is the top dog in Viper Jocks. Mm-hmm. All just great storytelling.
It is. It is.
And I think then you get into, you know, you can't go home again. I love the fact that you have, you know, when they're going out, when Apollo's heading out to go find Kara, Eddie just has one line, handing him his helmet, find her. And it's like, you now understand just how personal this is, you know?
Yeah.
And then you further understand when Adama starts yelling at Ty, and you're like, okay, it's now clear Adama is totally lost any shred of objectivity he has. Mm-hmm. And which then leads to Ty getting relieved from duty, which is the absolute peak of Ty's military decorum.
Yes.
Like in that moment, like the crisp salute and the spin to the, you know, the quick turn to the left and the way he marches off, I'm like, that is the most military Ty is in the entire show.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's when he's getting relieved of duty. Like, go figure. It's him just being like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a jerk on the way I march out. Like, that is so Ty. It's great. I love that.
Not an act of contrition.
Yeah, not at all. But overall, in this episode, it's very interesting how everyone is right and wrong, because all the people who want to leave Starbuck are wrong because she did find a way, but yet all the people who are wanting to stick around are wrong because they are in fact endangering the fleet. Like it is all in gray area, even though you might think it's black and white, but it really isn't. Like the entire episode is gray area because everyone's right and everyone is also wrong.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. It's kind of remarkable that they managed to resolve that. And then, of course, when you get that final shot of Starbuck in sickbay and she's in that bed, it is the exact mirror of when Starbuck is walking out of Adama's quarters when he's like, you know, walk out of here while you still can. Which, I mean,
right.
Good God. To then know about Starbuck later on, about how she has been like physically abused by her mom. I mean, that's got to be a horrible thing to hear just in general. But the way that Adama kind of treats her in that moment, and her face and her expression is just the polar opposite. It's a mirror image of what you see in that other in Act of Contrition, which is remarkable. It's just a remarkable 2 episodes, remarkable little story arc, and just tells you so much about these characters and takes those characters on such a journey.
Yeah.
And really gives you such information. To me, it's like, this is like distilled Galactica. Like this is like so many of the reasons why I love this show, all packed into 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. That all being said, I got to pick one, which I really was trying to think of a way that I could have like a double count out or something, and then it would be a 3-way dance but then that just prolongs the agony.
The foundation of my basement is shaking.
I know.
Good Lord.
It's
what's going
tough.
on?
But I'm going to go with Act of Contrition. Solely because of the acting performance of Katie Sackhoff and Eddie Olmos. They are just incredible in those episodes, in that episode, and just the way that they managed to go between vulnerable and you know, oh my gosh, just Eddie's rage.
Yeah.
Like I realized, because I was watching these kind of late at night, so I had my headphones plugged in to the TV so I could actually have it, you know, at a decent volume, and I'm not keeping my family awake and they're not further hating me. So I'm listening, and all you can hear is Eddie breathing through his nose. And I never quite realized like how much in the sound mix that is. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you can tell, like, that is the most pissed off breathing I have ever heard. It's just a great performance by both of them. And so Act of Contrition, moving on to the finals, sir.
So it's the rage of Adama in your Region 1 versus Region 2. And for me, I have the rage of Rosalind in
Yes.
Blood on the Scales.
Yep.
Balance,
in
ladies and gentlemen.
all things, which gets us to our other half of the Final Four. So you have Crossroads going up against Bastille Day. I have Maelstrom going up against Someone to Watch Over Me. So let me summarize your two, and then we'll hear your reasonings behind this one. Crossroads, two-parter, season ender. Tensions mount as Baltar's trial begins. Caprica 6 stirs memories of Colonel Ty's wife. Gaius Baltar's trial concludes. The fleet jumps into the Ionian Nebula, and 4 of the final 5 Cylons discover their own true identities, aka a whole lot of crap going on. Bastille Day from season 1. As water riots break out in the fleet, Apollo tries to convince prisoners aboard the tragically named Astral Queen to help with collecting the water. However, the appearance of a famous terrorist complicates his plans. Oh my gosh! Even Ron Moore in their commentary are like, why did we name the prison ship the Astral Queen? Like,
what have I done?
I mean, I'm sure it was a funny joke, and then you have to actually live with it. You're like, oh, this was a bad idea. This is a bad idea. Like Ron Burgundy, milk was a bad idea. So how did you factor this one down, sir? Do you need a break to like decipher some more notes on your legal pad, or have you managed to get to the proper pages?
Well, if I dot the I and carry the 2, okay. So
are we into algebra now? Jeez.
Well, figure as much. Yeah. So for Crossroads, this is going to be a bit of a. This is almost an unfair match in some ways, because again, we have a 2-parter versus a 1-parter. Crossroads, really at the core of this one throughout most of it is the trial. So we had the tragedy of Felix Gaeta. Now we have the trial of Gaius Baltar. And we have the phenomenal Romo Lampkin working his magic as the defender for one Mr. Baltar, along with associate defender Lee Adama.
Yes, Romo Lampkin, the kleptomaniac, cat aficionado, and barrister extraordinaire.
A raconteur.
I mean, what else can be said about this man? What else can be said?
Really at the core of Crossroads across the 2 parts is that trial and then the fallout from it. We have really both Lampkin and later on Lee both kind of lay out that the argument of how in many ways the fleet is kind of channeling all their rage and disappointment and angst into Baltar, not really realizing that the occupation on New Caprica and really some of the actions that he took as president were not choices of his own free will, but really forced upon him by the occupying Cylons. They don't get into adjudicating whether or not the entirety of the situation was his fault, which in that case, guilty is charged. But it was really more about the fallout of the occupation and there was a death order that he was forced to sign, basically with a gun to his head. And so we have a lot of different characters. Gaeta basically perjures himself when he lies about, Baltar willingly signing the death warrant because he wants to see him dead. You have Ty's phenomenal testimony, somewhat emotional because he has to basically admit that he killed Ellen. Because of her betrayal, but then we get good old wacky Ty where he's just kind of like the music's in the fracking ship, getting all kind of crazy there, and then of course his drinking gets brought up. You have Rosalind take the stand and the soul crushing back and forth between her and Lee, where Lee forces her to basically reveal that she is once again suffering from cancer and on the Kamala regimen, if you will. And of course, it all kind of ends up with Adama, admitting to Lee that he he kind of already made his mind up about Baltar being guilty, and Lampkin tries to use that as means to declare a mistrial. But in the end, the jury votes 3-2 to let him go, which of course then Baltar's next question is, well, where do I go? I mean, it's really kind of a remarkable thing. Like, he ends up winning, but he loses in the court of public opinion, and now is realizing, where do I go?
Yeah. Can you direct me to the nearest harem, please?
So very interesting turn of events for him. From there, we have...
Is there perhaps a naughty sex clan around that I could go and hang out with?
It's funny. It's like if I'm remembering correctly, like he's walking through the ship after the trial is done, holding the only belongings that he has in his arms, and everyone's just looking at him with like this stink eye, like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, and he's just not sure what to do with himself. We also get in this one, Rosalind is back on her Kamala regimen, and so she's having visions and comes to the realization that she, Athena, and the Caprica Six are all having the same dream about the opera house and about Hera. So we have that revelation, and then of course the biggest revelation. The second to biggest revelation of this episode, the final four Cylons, Tyrell, Anders, Tori, and Ty, all hearing the same song throughout these two parts and trying to make heads or tails of it, especially when they jump into the nebula, and from there come to a realization that they are in fact four of the final five, which was really just heartbreaking and kind of status quo shattering for the series, especially with Ty and Tyrell being from the very beginning serving on Galactica and being a core part of that crew. Anders and Tori probably the least consequential of them all, being a fairly new character, but Anders, he had kind of established himself a bit more and was Starbuck's, husband. And so, there's a bit of a shock there as well. So, so with all that, and then of course the biggest revelation, I'll get to it when you cover yours, but the return of Starbuck and that incredible shot, that pullback from where they are in the nebula to that zoom in of the Earth that we know and love as the final destination for the fleet. So Crossroads, just a lot packed into it. A lot of very consequential things happening in it that would essentially ripple into season 4 and into the series finale as well. So just top to bottom, an extraordinarily strong 2-part season finale, and just an amazing storytelling journey just across multiple narratives of different characters, and the way relationships are ravaged, impacted, and evolved through the events. Bastille Day is is really the alpha or the Zarek. How did I say it? Alpha Zarek or Zarek Alpha? I forget.
It's the beginning.
The beginning, the debut, the introduction of one Tom Zarek. And in this episode, we have the prisoners being potentially used as labor to mine ice for replenishing their water supplies. Tom Zarek is organizing them. There's a prison riot that ensues where Apollo and a few others, Callie included, are taken prisoner. Apollo tries to reason with Zarek, realizes Zarek wants to be a martyr and wants there to be bloodshed on the Astral Queen, and so as is the habit of Adama, he sends his Raptor assault team to take care of business. What ends up happening is that Apollo strikes a deal with Zarek, and we have a discussion of free elections. And Zarek, from that point forward, becomes more of a political player as opposed to a terrorist and a bit of a resistance fighter. This was significant because it was the introduction of Richard Hatch, who was the original Apollo, into the series. It was the establishment of a character who, over time, would consistently rear his head in different episodes, sometimes unexpectedly, and was always kind of an agent of chaos, an agent in the background, trying to kind of manipulate events and bend the fleet to his will. Became very successful, as we discussed in Blood on the Scales. Almost became very successful in doing that, but like we talked about with Blood on the Scales, there was the implication that he is a bloodthirsty son of a gun, and we did not see it in this episode. If anything, this is kind of the emergence of a more civil Tom Zarek, and that's what we kind of see throughout the series. And then in Blood on the Scales, we kind of see him revert to the bloodthirsty, bloodlust sort of Tom Zarek, with power being kind of the motivator for him there. I think it's about it. This is also significant because, as we talked about in Lay Down Your Burdens, this is the episode where Baltar is given possession of a nuclear warhead for his Cylon detector. That nuclear warhead would then be handed over in the chain of custody to Gina, and Gina would then decide to light that one up when she recognized that she was going to have to spend the rest of her life with Baltar. So, with that being said, that is Bastille Day, the debut of one Tom Zarek.
That never really occurred to me, but that nuke was sitting around for an awfully long time. And nobody, you would have thought eventually Adama would have asked for it back or something,
Yeah, they just kind of handed it around like it was just, here's a nuclear warhead.
Handing it around. It was like he said he needed it for the Cylon detector, and they gave it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then time goes by, and then he just sort of re-gifts it, I'm not using this, so here, you have it. But nobody in between there thinks like, hey, that guy who's kind of wacky and he talks to himself every so often?
Mm-hmm.
We catch him like he's acting real weird. Do we really think he should still have a nuke? I don't know. Maybe we ought to get that back.
Or from the time he gave it to Gina to the time when she finally lit it off, did the question not get once asked to him, hey, where did that thing go?
Yeah, it's just how jacked up the entire situation is when a nuke goes missing and everyone's like, it'll turn up eventually.
Yeah. We're not worried about it. We have plenty of them.
Yeah.
But it is decision time. And
where'd you come down on this one?
This one was a much easier decision than the prior Region 1 versus Region 2 matchup. This one, I wouldn't quite call this what's his name? Not Barry Windham. What's the jobber we keep talking about? Horowitz.
Barry Horowitz.
Yeah, this is not quite a Barry Horowitz situation. Maybe it's a little more like a Red Rooster situation.
Oh my gosh!
But nonetheless, Crossroads advances into the finals, ladies and gentlemen. Season 3 series finale, 2-parter, with a lot of meat to it, a lot of soul, a lot of consequence that really in a lot of ways, it's kind of like the fulcrum of the series, because this catapults everything forward into what is the final voyage of the Galactica and the Cylons and Cylon rebels, as we will soon see. So Crossroads is what I am going with in Region 3 versus Region 4. What about you, sir?
Well, for me, my matchup is Maelstrom versus Someone to Watch Over Me. So we have a Season 3 going up against Season 4. And guess what? They both feature Starbucks. So let's dive right into this. Maelstrom is summarized as Starbuck's past comes back to haunt her when Adama has doubts about her fitness for duty. And Someone to Watch Over Me is summarized as Starbuck encounters a mysterious piano player in Joe's bar and helps him work on his latest song. Realizing the musical notes match a series of dots drawn by Hera, Starbuck finishes a song which Colonel Ty and Tori Foster recognize as the music they heard when they learned they were Cylons. Tyrell unwittingly helps Boomer, who poses as Athena, to kidnap Hera and take her to Cavil. So a lot of stuff going on in both of these. And one thing I didn't really realize is, so in this matchup, we basically are dealing with both halves of Kara's parental lineage here, or both her parents. I don't know why I'm trying to make this sound fancy. We're dealing with both her parents. So in Maelstrom, we're talking about Mommy Dearest, which, woo boy,
Whoa, Nelly.
That was a rough road right there. And then in Someone to Watch Over Me, we're basically dealing with her dad. And so it's a very interesting kind of how this turned out. But also is leaning more into Starbucks-centric episodes. It's kind of inevitable that these two would wind up here. I think the thing about, so going in kind of order here, for Maelstrom, I forgot when I was rewatching this how bloody eerie it is when she goes to see the Oracle. And the Oracle is sitting there like leaning over this bowl of water, and then you realize that it's her tears because the Oracle is crying constantly as she's talking, which is something that didn't stand out to me before, but having seen just the episode now, I'm like, wow, that is really spooky. And then the way that she's kind of repeating Leoben's words back to Starbuck is crazy. And then how like Starbuck tries to deflect it, like someone told you that. And she's like, have you ever told anybody that? And this weird, like, oh my gosh, the Oracle is so creepy. It's wonderful. Honestly, probably Maelstrom has some of the best Viper flying effects in any episode. Are in Maelstrom. It was just everything, like effects looked really good in this episode. And I think it's also interesting how you're also getting the further journey of Kara. Like before, there was no doubt about her. It was doubt about whether you could trust her, but she was always really good at what she did. And here it's like, is she no longer good at what she did? And then where does that leave her identity? And I think it's interesting because it ends up being, in every other instance, Starbuck kind of pushes herself. Starbuck pushes everybody else. And in this one, she's quitting. Like she has that scene where she's constantly seeing her younger self, and a younger self who is beaten up, bloodied, and goes to get in her cockpit and sees her younger self there, and she says, "I'm not going back out. I'm not doing it." And so it's Starbuck quitting, and Lee is the one who pushes her. Like finally, someone's pushing Starbuck, and nobody does that.
Yeah,
and.
Yep.
That whole idea that then before that progresses much further, she starts asking about Dee and Apollo and where they're at and all that, and she kind of brings it like, hey, we're back where we started. You're the CAG, I'm the screwed up pilot, and then she's like, and that's all we're ever gonna be. And it's this very weird kind of bittersweet moment because you can tell that Apollo is like, wow, I'm like, Dee is really wonderful, and she's not psychotic, and she's not she's not Starbuck. Right. And as much as Lee wants Starbuck, he's also like, you're also insane, and I know way too much about you and all these things. But there's also this bittersweetness to that. And then you get this idea of, Lee is kind of in a way responsible for Starbuck's demise. I'm sure that he feels because he pushed her to get back in the cockpit, and then ultimately she ends up going in.
Right.
I thought it was interesting because one of the things I hadn't considered, because there's always this debate about at the end, like, okay, Baltar says that Kara Thrace is an angel and she's an angel of light and all this. The thing I kind of started to wonder is Starbuck really the goddess Aurora, the little thing that, the little figurine that the Oracle gives her at the beginning is, oh, that's Aurora, and she ends up giving it to Adama as a figurehead for his ship. Is she goddess Aurora incarnate? Because it's a new dawn, a new chance, a fresh start, which is what Starbuck ultimately gives them when she comes back ending up in a very dark way, because she takes him to Earth, and it's the burnt out Earth. But then ultimately she is the one who gives them the fresh start on Earth, like the real Earth, the one that isn't completely nuked out. Right. So it's kind of crazy, and then you end up this whole scene of like she manages to get back to visit her mom on her deathbed, which is something that didn't happen in reality. That she walked out on her mom because her mom was being extraordinarily abusive and was like, I'm out, and she never went back, and her mom died not that long after, and she gets to go back and see her and understands like that her mom cared for her, loved her, was proud of her, but did not show it. and was jacked up in her own way. And she manages to mend that, and it's a very interesting episode because you do have this idea of letting go and Kara being now ready to take whatever that next step is. You again have this, this moment of vulnerability with Eddie Olmos at the end with the ship. He finishes the ship, he puts the little figurine there, and he's looking at it, and then he wrecks the thing, which is just powerful. It's tough to watch, but a great episode. And of course, this is the death of Starbuck, and it was very kind of unexpected because it's like third season, heading towards the end of the season, but still there's a lot of episodes left in the season, and now you've just killed off one of the characters that has been around since the beginning. And I don't know that this is way before D. So, up until now, like one of the only major characters that you've seen killed off is Billy. Hey,
what about Crash Down in his graphs?
Like I said, the only one is really Billy.
Oh, Billy.
Oh, it's a big one, Billy. Spalding, this one calls for the Billy Baroo. Oh my gosh. Ted Knight, what a great guy. Anyways,
Ted Knight.
Ted effing Knight. That's what it ought to be. Although he would probably never say that. He seemed like a very proper gentleman. So great episode. A lot going on there, and aptly named this Maelstrom because it really is just this twisting sort of story.
Yep.
Someone to watch over me is actually a lot more straight ahead. Although it gets into these very weird sort of things. And I love the beginning of this, the repetition of the days throughout the intro and just kind of her repeating the different parts of what's happening. And very much you get the feeling of like she is stuck in this kind of cycle and things ain't changing and all this. And I think it's also interesting, her first conversation with the piano player, where it's the same sort of thing that we deal with in our lives and in a greater sense in the world is, the juxtaposition, like what is the function of art in society, in our world, in our day, in our life? Because Starbuck makes the point of like, oh, you're did any of your music stop any of those bombs that were falling on Caprica? And it's like, because he's talking about, well, I'm trying to brighten up bring light to the life and this and that and the other. And it is like, where is that? It's like, does it serve a function that you can quantify? Well, not necessarily, but it does bring something to our lives, which is interesting it's an interesting conversation to just toss into a sci-fi show that is dealing with the extinction of the human race and the balance. It's like, hey, let's take a time out and talk about art. Okay, sure, why not?
Sure.
And the other thing, like you're dealing with Chief, and I've really felt for Chief in this moment because it's like, imagine having to see your ex everywhere you go. Like, not like picturing them or memories. No, physically, you see a copy of your ex everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that has to suck. That's a lot to deal with. I mean, you're already dealing with the fact that you're on the run from these, robots that want to kill you. Your entire species is going extinct. You've had this, that, and the other. And now your ex, who you found out, betrayed you and that you held while she was dying, and now you get to see her on your flight deck every single day. That's a mind job. That really suck. And then further, you start seeing just how manipulative Boomer has become.
Yeah.
And how much he's embraced that, and how much he's messing with his head with this imagined home and kid, and I can't help but think about like how his happiness in this moment is such like a mirror image, or like the opposite of the rage that you see when he kills Tori in Daybreak. That there are the polar extremes of Chief, and it is insane. Like, and Aaron Douglas does such a great job playing that. I think it just.
Oh yeah.
He managed to do a lot with not a ton with Chief. I mean, he really kept that character going for a while, making it interesting when there wasn't a whole lot going on with him in some of those episodes. And then of course, Ty, much as we were talking about, people selling the Stone Cold Stunner and Dwayne Johnson, rightfully so, being one of the gold standards. Because as we all know, in professional wrestling, when you're talking about selling, it's your reaction. It's your reaction to a person talking to you, or it's a reaction to the move. Like your reaction to that person doing something to you is as important, if not sometimes more important, than what that person is doing. Because it's what really sets context. It's what really, you get the impact of things. Ty is like the gold standard reactor in this show. He is like just so good, because even when you were talking about in Crossroads, when they find out they're all silenced, Ty is like, whoa.
That's right.
And you know what? It's perfect. It's perfect for that character, but it's also like what most of us would do. We just be like dumbfounded and be like, oh, like, and then his expression when they start playing that song at the end, and it's the same song that they heard when they knew they were Cylons. His expression is just amazing.
Yeah.
It's great.
Oh
my gosh, Michael Hogan in that moment is fantastic. Is priceless. And then of course you have the whole thing with Boomer impersonating Athena, and the whole thing with Hilo in the bathroom, which is interesting because where
Hilo Noir does become never mind.
It does turn into a bit of a striptease. I didn't see any tassels, but then again, I mean, you have to edit some things for television. But I did not remember that really it was Hilo kind of instigating that. Like, because he thinks it's his wife and she's going away for like a week and a half. And he's like, hey, how about a going away sort of party? And she kind of tries to pull away because she's like, I got a kid to kidnap. I got a raptor to catch. I am friggin' booked up right now. Maybe another time, but she eventually, does, and they do. And oh my gosh, just crazy.
Ugh.
But then, of course, when she finds out that Hera has been kidnapped by Boomer and goes back to that imagined house and is just gutted that it's empty, the kid isn't there, Boomer isn't there. It's all, he knows that he has been played so badly.
Yeah.
And oh man, it's tough. It is tough to watch. And then, of course, just the realization that you understand, like, the piano player is essentially Kara's dad. Like, they play the song and then he does the thing with the finger, like pointing to the last note, and she, like, you're blowing the smoke away from a gun. She does that, and it all kind of comes together, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
It's been her all along. It's been in her head. Just great. And I didn't realize I was going to be talking about, Kara's mom and dad, lining these up until I rewatched them. Like, oh yeah, that is what we're talking about. Wow, that's crazy. In this matchup, though, I've got to give this one to Maelstrom. As much as I enjoy someone to watch over me, the breakdown of Starbuck, and then kind of the mending of her soul and her mind, with Leoben helping, mend that with her mom, is, to me, is just such an emotional journey. And again, it's such great character building for that character, and it was such a shock that she did die in the episode. It was a shock when I first watched it, it's kind of crazy, because in the show, it's easy now to go, oh, of course I'm not going to kill off a main character. I was like, well, I don't know, because when stuff happens in this show, it tends to happen for realsies. Like, they don't.
Yeah,
they didn't play, and they didn't play this trick many times, and they did it once, and it worked, So, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Maelstrom in this one. So yeah, that gives we now have our final matchup, sir. The Earth has not cracked open. I managed to make 2 of these decisions. We'll see if I can actually make the final decision, but who knows? There's still time.
As a man of balance, I just want to point out to the Agent of Chaos that you selected the death of Starbuck while I selected the return of Starbuck.
Yes.
You selected the rage of Adama, and I selected the rage of Rosalind. So say we all.
I guess. So say we all. Yeah, fine. Okay, so say we all. Fine.
Come on.
All right, so that means our finals are Blood on the Scales from Season 4 going up against Crossroads from Season 3 for The Man They Call Tim. And Uncle Todd has Act of Contrition from Season 1 going up against Maelstrom in Season 3. Sir, neither one of us have filled out what our final decision is.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got? Oh my gosh, are we really going to go do this dramatic?
Well, there are many things one must consider.
All right, I'm just going to edit this part out and cut right to the end if you don't.
I have a 20
dilly-dally around on this
manifesto to walk through on this topic.
Yeah, and you wrote it while you were drunk, so you can't even read it. So let's just cut to the chase here.
All right. Well, what are you saying? I'm translating over here.
What you do? Write it in Sanskrit? Do you write in tongues when you have a couple bourbons? What is this? French?
Maybe a little Espanol. Maybe a little.
I think that's
Espanol.
Portuguese. Actually, that's interesting.
So, Blood on the Scales: The Tragedy of Felix Gaeta versus Crossroads, the trial of Gaius Baltar, the return of Starbuck, the revelation of the Final Four, and Rosalind is dreaming in stereo with Athena and Caprica 6. It's just
all whacked out on the Kamala. She's all hopped up on it. It's Kamala madness, I tell you.
It is.
All right, I want to make a prediction before you type this out because I see you highlight.
Okay.
I think you're going with Crossroads.
All right. And why do you think that?
I just think it has more meat on the bone, if you will. There's a lot more to it. Blood on the Scales is a fantastic episode. It's a great choice. Either one of these is a great choice. Let's just put it that way.
Yes.
But I think Crossroads, it just is so much going on. And like you said, there's so many things in Battlestar Galactica that were like, you can preface them all with, you never saw this in another sci-fi show before this.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yes, making the choice of ending season 2 with the occupation of New Caprica, Crossroads being the return of Starbuck and all. I mean, it's just stuff that you hadn't seen before. But I just think that Crossroads has a lot more to it. So that's why I think. But you tell me what your pick is, sir.
Are you ready?
I just want to be on record, so you go right ahead. What do you got?
I am typing out Crossroads.
I thought so.
For as much as I feel Blood on the Scales is a high quality and very high energy and high charge kind of an episode, you said it. Crossroads, it just has more meat on the bone. It is, as I said before, it just it's not a fulcrum in the sense that it balances, 4 seasons, evenly at the end of season 2, because this is the end of season 3. But it is a pivot point for the series, and it is a point of no return. And the events that transpire, of course, inform season 4, but really drive the impetus and purpose of all parties involved forward in that one, and it's just, and quite honestly leads to Gaeta landing in the situation he does, where he has his leg amputated and begins to question everything that he's known before. Really, Starbuck coming back is what really kind of impacts Gaeta in a very negative way, and so so Crossroads, coming out of all of the debate, the adjudicate, I have meditated, and I will now enunciate that it is Crossroads season 3 that is getting my nod as the best of the best, the cream of the crop. Ooh, yeah. Coming out. Randy Savage.
You're holding out one of those little mini moos as you said that for a visual reference.
Kind of.
If you were still working out of the office, you totally would have stolen one of those today just so you could have it. Even though we're not on video, you would have been, I just need it there.
Yeah. But yeah, Crossroads is my final pick. The cream of the crop, the best of the BSG series. That is my selection. You, sir, if I may make a guess, as you have done for me. with Maelstrom from season 3 versus Act of Contrition from season 1. Hearing you talk about both of these shows, it is, or these episodes, I should say, not shows. It is difficult to hone in on precisely what you will select, because both, I think, have major points of engagement, of emotion, of passion from these characters, as you articulated, with Maelstrom, focusing heavily on the Starbuck mom relationship and Act of Contrition, and interestingly enough, again, in a balanced way, the father-daughter sort of thing going on with her and Adama. But it just feels like at the end of the day, Maelstrom is kind of where you're going to land, because of the impact of that relationship and the impact of the death of Starbuck, the heft that carries. Would rule the day and make Maelstrom your crown jewel. Starbuck v. Starbuck, with Starbuck going over. Was I close or was I wrong?
Well, I mean, you're close because there's only 2 choices, so you can't be that far off, I guess.
Come on, man.
I'm just throwing it out there. Just, it is a very difficult decision. However, when I look at this, you have Starbuck crashing at the end of Act of Contrition. You have Starbuck crashing at the end of Maelstrom. What I propose is that these are essentially the same episodes, so it's impossible to make a choice between the two. So really, I have no choice but to award this to both episodes.
What? You can't do that. You must make a selection.
We made up this whole thing. Why can't we?
Good Lord.
How much would that stick in your craw? Would you even be able to sleep tonight if I truly stood on that? You'd be grinding your teeth as you're laying in bed, like just straight as a board, full of tension. Your wife's like, "What is wrong with you?"
So you have this vein bulging from the right side of my forehead. Oh my gosh!
I actually imagine the vein just like right in the middle of your forehead, and then just going all the way back to your spine, like it's just fully, like it's a ridge along your entire head. Well, it's like, I've got your bag packed for the hospital. I've already got the ambulances on the way. I'm just sending you in.
Good Lord. Unbelievable.
We've got to reset the days without incident.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm not going to do that. As much as I've said I'm going to try and have a double count out, a dusty finish, something. I'm waiting for. Actually, what I'm doing right now is I'm killing time in the ring. I'm waiting for a run in. That's what I'm waiting for.
I was going to say it's Starbuck against Starbuck, and you're going to send Starbuck in to ruin it for Starbuck so that Starbuck goes over.
No, actually, I'm going to send Ellen in because she messes everything up.
Well, that's fair.
That is the agent of chaos. That is the Joker in the Galactica universe.
Indeed.
It is a very difficult decision because there's a lot going on in both of these really good performances. However, as we've talked about before, there is a little bit of gravitas that you have to give to what ultimately came first. And I truly believe that kind of season 1 is kind of the gold standard for a lot of these episodes, even though, fantastic episodes in 2, 3, and 4 as well. But you have to go back to kind of that first glimpse of what made this show really special. And like I said before, the performance of Katie Sackhoff, Eddie Olmos, and to a lesser degree, Jamie Bamber in this particular episode, in Act of Contrition. Outstanding. And I think it was one of those deals where, Edward James Olmos had said afterwards, that he thinks that, Katie Sackhoff's a great actor and, incredibly talented, and was very effusive in his praise for her. And you look at now and it's like, well, there's a reason why she's in the Star Wars universe. That says something. And, you could even make the case of something like, oh my gosh, the show name is slipping out of my mind right now. We did an entire episode on it.
Mandalorian? Oh, no. Another Life.
Another Life. Thank you. I would argue that even though you can make a case that there are some elements of Another Life that are a little bit B movie-ish, it would have been like pure B movie if you don't have someone like Katie Sackhoff with her acting chops anchoring that show. Mm-hmm. And I think it goes back to just the fact that it's not just that you believe that she's a character, like she actually believes it. Like it is coming from a heartfelt place. And that was really the first time in this show that I can remember really seeing that. Even when I was watching it the first time around, like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing acting performance, you know? And I'm going to give it to Act of Contrition. It's the OG, amazing performances, great character work, great informing of who the character is, and really, it is, like I said, those 2 episodes, you know, Act of Contrition, Can't Go Home Again, distilled Galactica for me. And if I've got to pick one, I'm going to pick that first half.
I should have known. It couldn't have been as simple as the death of Starbuck and the resurrection of Starbuck. No, you would go the other way and go to season 1.
Well,
and have it be completely unrelated, out of balance, and chaotic, thus living up to your tenets and beliefs.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
You're welcome. And you're still going to be aggravated all night long. You blew it! It could have been perfect!
Could have had a nice little bow on it, but no. You had to go and screw it up.
Nope. No bow. I can't tie bows, so it's just a bunch of tape and string in a very messy sort of contraption. That's how I wrap this one up. You're welcome.
I thought tie bow was karate.
I don't know karate, but I know crazy.
Oh.
Little James Brown for you right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Very nice. Very nice.
I don't know karate, but I know crazy.
Oh, boy.
Oh, the payback. Gotta get you some payback. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. One of the heaviest songs James ever. Oh, the groove on that. Woo! Oh, Lord. Dang. But you gotta go like the 1970s, like the prime James Brown, like mid to late 70s, early 80s, but then after that it kind of everything started speeding up so much it took a lot of the funk right out of it, which kind of sucks. But yeah. Oh my gosh, you hear that song back in the day. Woo! Oh Lord. Just James screaming about how he wants some get back. God love it. Anyways, I don't know
well selected, sir.
We went from Edward James almost to just James Brown, and you know, I ain't mad. I ain't mad at all.
Not at all.
And another thing.
Sir, what do you got for and another thing this episode?
I have a little local ditty of sorts. Yesterday, the missus and I went downtown to Chicago to the Goodman Theater, and we took part in a play that was performed by the great Sean Hayes and company. Sean Hayes of Will and Grace fame. The play was called Goodnight Oscar. And it is the story of Oscar Levant, who was called was a favorite of Jack Parr when he did the Tonight Show, and was called in for the first time. The Tonight Show emanated from L.A. The wrinkle in this story is that Levant at the time was a drug addicted and depressed individual who had been committed to a sanitarium, and whose wife had got him out on a 4-hour pass to go and perform at said Tonight Show. And so it is the story of yes, it is, sir.
Wow.
And it is the story of that night in 1958 when he was granted a temporary leave from his long-term stay at an inpatient institution where he was undergoing treatment for drug addiction, depression, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. So he could appear on The Tonight Show starring Jack Parr. And over the course of that night, we see him grapple with his addictions, mental health struggles, the ghosts of his past. Very interesting part in that was how he was very much locked into a performance. I don't know what to call it exactly, but was very much an interpreter of George Gershwin's music and was kind of locked into that after Gershwin's death, apparently in 1937. So he was one of the premier players of his music and was kind of locked into that. That was kind of what he was known for. And during the play, it kind of goes into how that played into some of his madness, because he had his own music he wanted to play, but no one wanted to really hear it. They wanted to hear him play the Gershwin music. And so it was very, very interesting. Sean Hayes was just amazing in it. There's even toward the end basically when he does Oscar Levant's performance on the piano at the Tonight Show, was all done, I believe, by Sean Hayes himself, and it was just a masterful performance on the piano. So I would highly recommend it. They also show the interview that Jack Parr does with I don't know if it's the full interview or if they whittled it down, but it was really funny because the director of the Tonight Show comes out and tells them they're not to do the taboo topics, which are politics, religion, and sex, and they basically go ahead and talk about politics, religion, and sex, and it was really funny. So well done. But overall, yeah, just an absolute delight. And so yeah, Goodnight Oscar at the Goodman Theater. And just would highly recommend it if you're in Chicago and want to see a good show. It's performing through April 24th at the Goodman Theater.
Wow, you are a sophisticated fellow, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Going to the theater,
getting the culture, getting the culture,
musical performances that you attend, the fine dining, all of it. It's quite honestly, it infuriates me because you're everything that I want to be and I'm not. So
stop it. Stop it. Although I got to say, I did have a really good steak and bourbon after the show. So.
Of course you did. Of course, because you have a steak and a bourbon after everything. I had a really good movement this morning. I'm gonna have a steak and a bourbon. That was a really good meeting. Let's have a steak and a bourbon.
Why not?
Right now, Tim has 20 pounds of undigested beef in his digestive system, followed by about a gallon and a half of very, very expensive bourbon.
Oh, will you stop?
And when it's finally processed through, oh boy, I'm not sure if the sewer system in the Chicagoland area is prepared for that. There better be no sparks, because it'll be burning like one of them mine fires for the next 60 years.
A whole different Chicago fire.
What's that shining in the night sky? That's the Great Chicago Fire of the sewers. Rumor says that it was lit on fire 10 years ago and it's still burning brightly. It's all because of bourbon and steak.
All because of it.
One man's folly is responsible for our doom.
It's the unknown fifth horse of the apocalypse, the bourbon stoked steak.
It's the bourbon and steak sewer fire. Yes, it's the lesser known of the four horsemen. They don't really like to talk. He has to ride behind them on a Shetland pony. Really, that's. But you don't want to mess with him. He's really mad. If you were like the ignored fifth horseman of the apocalypse, you'd be really pissed off. So you don't mess with him.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. That is hysterical.
Well, where do we go from there? Where are we? What are we talking about now?
So I was talking about a cultured play in the city with steak and bourbon. You, sir, I think are about to take us to the other end of the spectrum, entertainment-wise.
Well, that was part of the reason that I was taking that in the direction that I was. I wanted to bring I felt like we needed to downshift a little, and I just didn't want to go directly there. So I felt like the sewer fire would be a good way to go. Probably wrong, as I am about so many things in my life, but so be it. So my and another thing this week, I caught the first couple episodes of a show now on the Paramount Plus, which is Halo. And I am completely uneducated on the video game Halo. I'm vaguely aware of some of the stuff that has to do with it. I've never played the game before. I know a lot of people are absolutely into this. It was a cultural phenomena that passed me by because at that point my console gaming days were over. Or actually, they weren't over, but I think at that point I'd pretty much just stuck to sports games because I was never one of those guys who could stick around and play some of those games that, you know, it took like weeks and months and stuff like that to solve them. It frustrated me at a certain point. So I just stayed away from them because I'm like, I'm paying how much money to be like just pissed off? Great. I could go play golf if I want to do that.
That's what would send Uncle Todd to bed, grinding his teeth and, you know, shaking his fist at the world.
Well, not so much shaking my fist as I'd have to then like pull the controller out of the drywall, you know, which is why, again, I never had like the cordless controllers because then I could get a lot more speed and then I wouldn't have the cord to pull them back out from the wall. So that was always dual purpose. So I kind of went into the show not really knowing anything more than just like, oh, Master Chief is the main character and it's in space, and I didn't know nothing about it. So it was just a sci-fi show to me. And I'm really enjoying it. I've seen the first two episodes. You know, it's interesting. If you're like me, and I've read a couple of reviews where apparently Halo fans are not exactly 100% happy with this. Go figure. A fan isn't happy with an adaptation of something that they love. Who would have thunk it? And upset for some good reasons. You know, they've changed some things, but of course it's all adaptation. And you know, if you just did the video game, I mean, who really cares? If you enjoyed it, you probably played it before. But if you're coming into it cold, a lot of people are just like, oh, it's a sci-fi show and are enjoying it, which has been my experience. I'm enjoying it. The effects are really well done. I think there's some good acting performances happening. And, you know, it's an interesting story. And it's kind of the way that they're presenting it, it's easy enough to get into it if you know nothing about Halo. You can kind of catch up pretty quick as long as you keep your eyes open and you can keep track of things. Like if you can add more than like 2 digits to 2 more digits, you're probably going to be all right here. If you're stuck to 2 + 2 = 4, you're in trouble. But I think it's a good show, and I'm excited to see how the rest of the season goes. It's been a kind of a new thing for me. I'm like, oh, this is good. I gotta say, I'm actually on the whole enjoying this more than I'm enjoying Star Trek Picard.
Really?
Last week's episode kind of helped a little bit, but still just not loving season 2 of Star Trek Picard. The first couple episodes of Halo to me, it's just fun. But then again, it's just fun, and I have no history with the characters or anything like that. So it's just sort of like, if it sucks, I was like, I'll just stop watching. Whereas, you know, Star Trek Picard has a little bit more to it because, you know, Star Trek The Next Generation was my Star Trek. That was my crew. That Jean-Luc Picard was kind of my captain. So a little bit more at stake. But if you're looking for a good sci-fi show and you're not heavily invested in Halo, I would actually give it a try. It's a fun show.
Very cool. I played Halo back in the early 2000s when it first came out. You know, when Xbox was just kind of on the rise, and it was a groundbreaking kind of game at the time, you know, in terms of interactivity in the game and what you could do. So yeah, I'm curious. As is my way, I do have an account with Paramount Plus, so I will have to check it out.
You ought to, sir. You ought to.
Indeed.
Well, thank you all very much for all the listeners for tuning in, for downloading, for listening. We certainly appreciate you coming here to check out our humble little outpost of idiocy here on the World Wide Web. And it's been a hoot going through into now hour 7 of our show here as we've gone through all of the brackets and finally come down to the bestest episodes of Battlestar Galactica. And you know, I'm not saying that Tim is wrong. Well, he is. He's wrong. Act of Contrition, definitely a way better episode than Crossroads, but, you know, don't tell him that. We don't want to spoil anything for him. But I do want to thank... See, there you go. There's that delay on the interwebs that happens every so often. But thank you to all the members of the Free Range Idiocy congregation for gathering once again. We do so appreciate it. We do so appreciate you listening, for your support, for the downloads, all of that. Definitely make sure to spread the word. Spread the word far and wide until basically people are sick of you, and then you'll understand how our families feel about us. And then we can all gather together in misery. It's a whole thing. It's a process, if you will. Not a very good one or a recipe for success, but it's a process, so you can trust in that. And hey, isn't that always fun? But if you're not a member of the Free Range Idiocy congregation, you're saying, you know what? This whole thing sounds like a halfway mix between an MLM scam and a cult. Where do I sign up? Well, here's how you do it. All you have to do is just subscribe. And if you want to subscribe, an easy way to do it is you go to freerangeidiocy.com, and all of our episodes are right there, and you can subscribe to the Podbean app, or you can just download them all directly. If you're a little bit more invested in one of the podcast purveyors out there, go ahead and search for Free Range Idiocy. We are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Podcasts, we are on iHeartRadio, we're on Spotify, a whole bunch of others. And just go ahead and search for us, and you'll find us. Download all the episodes there and listen to your heart's content, starting with the last couple, because then you'll be able to go through the March Madness bracket that we've been doing with Battlestar Galactica, and you'll love it. You'll love it, and if not, it's a great cure for insomnia, so I've heard. So you have that going for you as well. If you don't happen to find us on your podcast purveyor of choice, feel free to email Tim at freerangeidiocy.com. Let us know where you'd like our podcast to be, and I'll do my best to get it there. And if not, well, you'll just have to go outside your comfort zone. If you would also like to get a little deeper into the Free Range Idiocy congregation, what you can do is you can find us on the social medias. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, we're on the Instagram. All of those are at Free Range Idiocy. If you have a question, a thought, a concern, a suggestion for a show, or just maybe just want to give us a piece of your mind, if you can spare it, go ahead and send that to Tim at freerangeidiocy.com. Don't send them to me, because I personally don't care. Tim, however, is a very empathetic, caring human being, and has more than just a lump of coal for his heart, which is where I'm at. So,
and I've leveled up in our MLM, so I'm now an upstream manager. Just for
good. So you're getting like 10% off of everything that I make, right?
Exactly.
Okay, good. I don't know what 10% is of zero, but you're welcome to it.
Thank you.
So now we come to the time of the show where I finally stop flapping my gums, and a hallelujah emerges from the congregation, but not before I ask the second most important. Oh my gosh, I'm falling apart in short order here. This is going to be fantastic. I might not make it to the end of the show. I might just gag on my own spit and pass out. Which is great, because I'm probably going to fall in the direction of the cat box. So I'll be laying there, and the cat will have to step over me before it goes into its cat box, which, quite honestly, that's the way it's always going to end for me anyways. So don't cry for me, Argentina. Just make sure you put me out with the trash. But not before I ask the second most important question in human history. The first, of course, being, what is hip? The second most important being, the hell did we learn tonight?
We have learned the following, my friend.
Good a list.
We have learned Moon Knight is dark, weird, but oh so good. Looking forward to seeing what the next 5 episodes are going to bring us on that one.
Mm-hmm.
We have learned the Wrestlemania weekend with, had a few entertaining nuggets in there and some real duds, like a spear out of nowhere.
Yeah.
We have learned.
Vinnie Mac made his money, so it's all good.
Indeed. And finally, we have learned the man they call Tim correctly. I'm locking up on what else to say. But anyways. What happens when you don't have notes, ladies and gentlemen.
You tried to lay the smack down on me. You just vapor lock totally. It's great. I'm just going to thoroughly make my point and
end of line.
It's like, did someone kick a plug out over there?
Oh.
Put him back in the bathtub. Put him back in the bathtub. Let's see what happens.
Oh my gosh. And finally, the man they call Tim. The man they call Tim coming out. Selecting Crossroads as his favorite BSG episode. and Uncle Todd, act of contrition, Starbuck oriented as we all expected. And
the
wrong.
new Universal Undisputed Champion of
wrong.
Battlestar Galactica.
You're wrong. But nonetheless, finally, we thank you. We thank you. As Uncle Todd has already said, but as I will emphasize, we thank you for going on this BSG galactic journey with us, for sticking through not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 episodes of this bracket-based craziness.
5 times.
Good Lord. We do appreciate it. We do appreciate
5 times.
it. For we have debated,
5 times.
adjudicated,
Had to make sure I got all
meditated,
5 in there.
enunciated, celebrated, and now we're going to get inebriated.
You read my mind, sir.
Well, there you go. Well, and with all that, we just, as we like to close out, be safe, be healthy, be kind, be good to one another. And because Uncle Todd needs a few shekels to get that Peacock subscription back to watch the best of Roman Reigns, please, would you hit the lights on the way out?
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
I beg your pardon, what did you say?
Draw me money!
Can we help Steven get a peek?
Damn!
Just that's it.
You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
So say we all. So say we all.
The best of Roman Reigns. Yeah. Best of Roman Reigns and his mysterious hair gel.
Yeah.
That's okay, so Roman Reigns and Randy Savage are the same person now?
I don't know. I just figured I'd throw that in there.
Now get the hell